Right, now we move to item 9, the organics processing plant development options. And I'd like to invite staff to the table because we have a short presentation. Jason. So we've got Helen and Jason. Would you like to introduce Joshua, sorry. Would you like to introduce yourself and your role, please, to the meeting?
Good morning, Helen Beaumont, Head of Three Waters and Waste, and I have with me Joshua Wilson.
Yeah, Contract Supervisor for the Organics Processing Plant.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a short presentation which we'll whip through relatively quickly, but then we'll have an opportunity for questions. So the Organics Processing Plant, as you know, is a critical part of our waste management system here in Christchurch, and incorporates the principles within our waste minimisation strategy. It's also clear that it's contributing to the long-standing odour issues out at Bromley, and so we've brought some options to you. David, thank you. Just for some context, the sites out in the Bromley area have been used for transfer station and for green waste composting for quite some time. So 1984 was the first use out at the transfer station, and green waste composting since, 1984 and then 1994 for the green waste composting. As you've heard, the organics processing plant itself, as we know it today, opened in 2009. It has a considerable throughput, so there are 60 to 70,000 tonnes of organic matter that go through that. Most of that is from our curbside bins, so approximately 50,000 tonnes from the green bins, from curbside. We also take the curbside bins from the Waimakariri District Council, and that's a much smaller proportion of it. Also, there is green waste that's dropped off at the Metro Eco Drop and can come directly into the organics processing plant. So that's people bringing trailer loads of garden waste, essentially. And there's a small amount of commercial material from industries. Can we move on, David? I don't seem to have control. Thank you very much. The Bromley odour issues have been ongoing for a number of years. It's a bit hard to read those, but you've heard from the residents today, and these are comments that have come through the Smelt It app about the impact on people, the constraints on them in terms of using their outdoor area and not wishing to open their windows, and the ongoing smell on laundry. So there is no doubt about the problems out in Bromley. In terms of those odour issues, they have been documented for many years, and there are, of course, a number of sources of the odours. The organics processing plant is one. The wastewater treatment plant has been out there for a number of years. The estuary itself can contribute to odours from time to time, particularly in the summer. There are both municipal and private transfer stations, so there are rubbish odours that are coming through there. There are a number of factories, including fish processors, and then a number of other heavy industries. As has been mentioned by Alexandra, the Environment Canterbury has focused on the broader odour issues in Bromley, particularly this year, and we've undertaken a pilot project with Environment Canterbury to utilise the community through the Smelt It app, so utilise the community in terms of monitoring odours, and then track back to measure the sources of those odours in the Bromley area. And many of you will have seen the presentations and the quite sophisticated mapping that's been done in terms of when odours were reported, where they were reported, and what the prevailing winds were at the time. From that work, Environment Canterbury concluded that 70% of the odour could be considered to be from the organics processing plant or from the transfer station, so it's a mix of those. In response to that, the council, together with Living Earth and Eco Central as the operators of those plants, put together an adaptive management plan and have been working through the actions in that plan over the past few months. The most significant one for the organics processing plant has been those operational changes and introducing a new recipe for the compost. So that's changing how they make that compost in the tunnels and then what the components of that compost are when they go outside. There's also been a lot of work at the transfer station, which is largely around good housekeeping and making sure that any particularly odorous material that comes in is immediately moved out of the station and into the trucks. And at the end of each day, everything is tidied up and away, so there's no rubbish left in the pits overnight. The work at the transfer station has been monitored by the operator and by Environment Canterbury, and that has now been determined to be compliant. So it's within the permitted activity standards in the air plan, which means that it's not producing offensive and objectionable odours beyond the boundary. So that is a very good news story there. For the organics plant, that is not the case, and the changes that have been made have not made a big enough difference to the odours that are produced there. So hence we're moving now to look at the long-term options for that plant. I've just put this slide in here just to remind people about what is an offensive and objectionable odour. And it is, of course, defined under the Resource Management Act. And when we measure it, you may think it's quite a subjective thing, that what is disgusting to one person is, oh yeah, it's a bit off to another. However, there is quite an objective way of assessing these odours, and there are trained people and calibrated noses out there, so you can be sure that this is done in an objective way. And it is indeed about these what are known as the FIDOL factors. So that's looking at the frequency of the odour, so how often those odours are experienced, the intensity or the strength of those odours, the duration or how long they persist, the offensiveness, that is the character of the odour, and indeed a mushroom farm is different to a bakery, which is different again to a laundry. So there are different characters of odours, and then the context, so where those odours are being experienced. So that is the test, if you like, for what is offensive and objectionable beyond the boundary. In terms of understanding the sources of the odour, as well as the pilot project work that has been done in conjunction with Environment Canterbury, we have also recently run a community survey, and we're grateful for those members of the community who responded either on the door-to-door survey questions or through the website and filling in those questions online. And that community survey does indeed demonstrate the extent of the issues in Bromley and the number of people that are affected, the number of residents that are affected. We've also done some work, and people will have seen or may have seen a truck driving around in the area, sampling the air and characterising the odorous compounds that are in that air in different wind situations. So that characterisation of the odour has also been done at the composting plant, and what we're wanting to do is determine what is the profile at the composting plant and what is the profile in the community. And that tells us much the same story as has been told for many years, that yes, there are odorous compounds that are produced at the composting plant found in the community, and there are also other odorous compounds within the community that are not generated by the composting facility. So there is a mix of odour issues and a number of sources of odour in the area. In terms of the current process, photographs are perhaps not a great substitute for going to the open days at the plant, but this is just to give you a short overview, and I think I'll hand across to Josh just to step us through the process.
Yeah, so all curbside material is dropped off in a processing hall. So that's got all air extracted through a biofilter. It's then blended and shredded and put into composting tunnels, so they're known in the industry as in-vessel composting units. In those composting units, air is kind of pushed through from the bottom, and you also have irrigation and temperature controls and that sort of thing in there to optimise the composting process as much as possible. Once it's finished in the tunnel, which at the moment is about 2 weeks, the compost is then moved outside into managed windrows, where it's turned with a windrow turner. That's the maturation phase, and that's the area that we're really looking at in this proposal to reduce. Following that, it's screened for contaminants with the process air from that also treated through a biofilter and then cured and sold mostly into the agricultural market.
In terms of the case for significant redevelopment at the plant, I just want to repeat that the operational changes that have been made have showed an improved stability of the product, but complaints continue to be received, and we are committed to being a good neighbour with this facility. So the facility itself is a vital part of the city infrastructure. The council want to continue to divert waste and meet the goals in our waste minimisation strategy. However, Environment Canterbury have advised that we are in breach of our resource consent and we need to act. The options for redevelopment are technically detailed and extensive. However, there are 5 main areas. So the first one is a technology upgrade to the present plant. So that is continuing what we do, however, significantly upgrading the technology so that we can produce a product that is superior and spends a lot more time in the tunnels compared to the time outside, and we'll put some more details into that. The second option that we looked at was the enhanced status quo, so that is continuing with the operational enhancements that we're making and continuing to improve the operation of the biofilter and the screening and the sprinkling on the plant. We don't consider that to be sufficient to make enough difference to the odour production on the plant. The third one is to enclose the whole process, and that could be done for the process as it is today, and also as part of the upgrade, so we'll come back to that one. A longer term option is to consider switching the whole process to anaerobic digestion, and that is one that, whatever decision we make today, we want to explore further in the longer term. And then the final one, to move the facility. The technology upgrade, I'll hand back across to Josh.
Yeah, so the technology upgrade is essentially in those tunnels where the initial stages of the composting happens at the moment. It's essentially to make sure those tunnels are creating the most optimum conditions for the composting process. So the composting plant was built just over 10 years ago. It's true to say technology has moved on quite a lot in that last decade. And essentially we're bringing it up to the industry standards of today. So part of that is increasing the aeration. That's probably the most predominant part. So relaying the floor. So there's a new floor design. It's called a spigot floor design. And it essentially means that more air can be pushed through the compost, so you can reach more parts of it and create a more uniform product. There's also upgrades to the doors to create a better seal, upgrades to the irrigation system and the monitoring systems. But essentially, it's to do with creating those, better that better environment for composting. The other part of it, which because of the increased aeration at the moment, from the screening process where all the contaminants are removed, some of the bigger material is then organic material is then reprocessed back into the front of the in the tunnels. That's basically to create some porosity to allow air to flow through easier, and that's basically removed because you then don't have to have that porosity because the power of the aeration is great enough to push through all of the product, even if it's finer. So then you create a lot more capacity, which means you could create a system where you can spend more time in the tunnel and it's getting further in the tunnel. So those are the predominant parts of the upgrade, and it really does have a significant impact on the amount of time outside. Did you want me to talk to that as well? Yeah, so this page basically gives you an idea of how successful it could be, or it can be. So at the moment, about 17% of the process is in the tunnel, so that's the 2 weeks, and it's 8 to 12 weeks outside. With the upgrades, we would only need 4 weeks we'd need 4 weeks in the tunnel and then 2 weeks outside. So in terms of space, you're looking at 30,000 square metres for maturing compost at the moment, and we're going down to 2,000 square metres. And it's worth noting that maturing compost isn't is at a greater level of stability at that point because it's had that longer time in the tunnel. So we have high confidence in it reducing odour significantly, and it's used. We're fairly unique in New Zealand in terms of the type of facility there is. When you look to Australia and Europe especially, you see this type of technology being used as standard throughout.
I think the important thing to note here is the outcome in terms of the potential to produce odour or dust beyond that boundary. So that 90% reduction in the amount of compost material sitting outside is a significant change and a significant decrease in terms of that potential to produce odours. What we've proposed in the paper is that we take in the report is that we take a staged approach. So the first stage would be to upgrade the technology and the aeration as outlined there. The second stage would be to monitor the odour and the dust produced from that plant, to work collaboratively with Environment Canterbury, and if necessary to then further enclose the remaining compost area maturing outside. So that would enclose both the maturing compost piles and the screening plant, and when the material is screened and then packaged for being sold. The other thing that we could look at doing is there are two processes on that site. One is through the tunnels and then into the windrows, and the other is just green waste processing in windrows outside. And that's the work that's been going on for some decades, and we have had very few complaints from that. However, with the upgrade, we could look at bringing that green waste processing back into the tunnels and putting it through the whole system. So there are a couple of additional things that we could do if the odour was still deemed to be an issue beyond the site. Moving to a longer term option of anaerobic digestion. The anaerobic digestion is changing the process completely. So it is one though that we are interested in exploring, and it's also one that could provide us an alternative to the landfill gas that's declining from Burwood, and we use that gas of course to power this building and across into the art gallery. So we do want to look at anaerobic digestion as an alternative in the longer term, and we'll bring a report back to council after we've done that work. In terms of procurement, that slide is very difficult to read. However, what we really wanted to say was that we could look at a standard procurement timeline, which would take up to 12 months to go through the design, procurement and engaging a contractor, or we could look at an expedited procurement timeline in terms of taking action much more quickly, both to meet the requirements of Environment Canterbury in terms of the adaptive management plan, and to meet the needs of the community for faster action. So we are looking at the options for that procurement. And we're happy to answer questions.
Right, thank you, Helen. I've got quite a few here from that have arisen from the deputations actually, which I would like to ask you first of all. I'm just wondering why you have not recommended to move the plant.
So moving the plant would be a much more expensive process, obviously. We would need to obtain land, and we would also need to obtain a resource consent for using that land for compost processing. However, what we may be doing is simply shifting a problem, and what we really want to do is address the problem. So what we would like to do is indeed be good neighbours and reduce both the odour and the dust from that site, so that it is not offensive and objectionable beyond that boundary.
So you're confident that the option that you've brought forward today is going to achieve that?
Yes, we are confident. We're confident in both the advice we've given and also in the experience of other composting plants in Australia and in Europe that we can meet those requirements. And we are also, that's why, and we're also wanting to take that staged approach so that at each stage we can assess what progress has been made and then take further steps if necessary.
And do the other plants that you're comparing this one to have residents in such close proximity?
Yes, yeah, there are plants with similar sorts of residential areas in the region.
Yeah, because I'm quite concerned about the compost dust in the air and the particulates, and leaving that 2,000 square metres open might not be.
I can touch on the dust. So the dust has not been an issue in terms of the consent guidelines. We have dust gauges, both upwind, downwind and around site. They tend to show that there is higher general dust, that's dust not linked to composting, than organic dust, which is what is expected to be linked to composting. And there tends to be more dust upwind than downwind of site. So we're confident that dust experienced by the community is not coming from the organics plant.
Okay, and if the other factor, the question I had around moving it, you've mentioned money, finding the land, getting the consent. What do you think would be a time frame if we would be looking at to do that?
I would expect that to be a 3 to 5 year time frame.
Do you know how long Cape Valley took? I think it was longer than that. Yeah, 5 to 7 years. However, that was a much, much larger facility. Okay, and the other question I have is why have you not recommended to just close it and take it all to landfill?
That is an option if council wishes to pursue it. However, that would go against the waste minimisation and management strategy that we have just adopted. So that strategy is looking at minimising waste to landfill and dealing with the waste in the most environmentally friendly manner. So that is not recommended. Okie
doke. And the other concern I have is around the adequacy of the biofilter. So you've mentioned in the recommendation that will be upgraded. And Jeffrey King, I think, mentioned a water method that it should be run through. Do you have any comments on whether you think the biofilter upgrade will be adequate to deal with a higher amount going through the tunnels, with more air being pumped into the tunnels?
So the biofilter upgrade does two things. So obviously there's more air being pushed through, so it has to be bigger to cope with that amount of air. Yeah. And it also splits it in to two sections, which basically creates a level of redundancy should any repairs need to be done. At present, we don't think there is any issue arising from the biofilter. From the assessments done throughout the March pilot and since, it's mainly focused, is mainly focused on those windrows, and ECAN haven't advised us formally of any issue with the odour from the biofilter. So we're fairly confident we're very confident it's doing its job. It's a very well used technology and used in multiple other places in Bromley and around New Zealand and globally. So we don't see any issue arising from the biofilter or the upgrades that are needed.
All right, there just seems to be a community perception that the biofilter might not be doing its job. And my other question, Helen, is, and this has come from a submitter, do you think that the options presented today are tinkering at the edges, or do you think it's something more substantial than that?
One of the options here today could be described as tinkering with the edges, and that's the enhanced status quo. However, we're not recommending that. We do not think that will make a significant change. I think that the technology upgrade is a step change in odour management and odour control on that site.
Thank you. Aaron, Tim, Mike, Melanie?
Yeah, so thank you, Helen. So it's been pretty obvious for a number of years that the residents around there just want no odour from this particular site. They probably accept there's others that come from Bromley, but we're talking about this particular site. If we go for your recommendation today, what will be the approximate date they will not smell anything from this particular site?
That does depend on the procurement approach. So the longest would be 2 years, and we would hope to do it faster than that.
Yeah. So the expedited one.
I can't give you a time frame for the expedited one because we'd have to explore what we can do with our procurement people, see what available contractors we have, but we would be working to do that as soon as possible.
And the $1 million question, will all of these upgrades mean they no longer smell the plant?
We consider that that this will be a significant improvement from the plant. I think that it will easily meet the test in terms of no offensive and objectionable odours beyond the boundary. Will there be zero odours? No, I don't think so. So I think that it will minimise the odour issues from this site.
Thank you. Tim, and just before we come to you, the written submissions have been printed out and they're on the round table there if anyone would like to grab one from the gallery. Tim?
Excuse me, thank you. Just when you were explaining the technology upgrade, it seemed that you were more interested, or it just seemed there's a weighting on the production process rather than the emphasis on reducing odour. What are your comments? I mean, it's just what I perhaps perceived from what you were saying, so can you clarify that? I've got a couple of...
So, the odour at the moment is predominantly focused from the maturing windrows outside. That's essentially because there's too much activity happening in them. Essentially, there's too much breakdown of organic material in those windrows, which has an odour to it. By increasing the amount of that degradation within the tunnels, you essentially remove that odour from outside, and you put that odour is being produced in the tunnels, which is then treated through the biofilter. So having a better process and production at the front end solves odour at the tail end of the process.
Thank you. And there's been comment with regards to, and it's an industrial area, and I went to school in Woolston at Marshall Street East was right by Davis Gelatine, etc. So there is obviously a difference in this area than those other areas. Hornby would be another one, etc. So I'm just wondering, had an idea of, whilst there is the technology upgrade, if that is the way we go, that there would be, could there be a stop of organics going to the plant whilst the upgrade is being undertaken and then resuming after it's been taken, been put in, if that's the way we go? So a temporary stop of the organics going there whilst the upgrades are being undertaken.
There would be a significant operational cost to council for that. So it was estimated for any shutdown of the facility, it's going to be about $750,000 a month. To then take that material to landfill whilst the upgrade's happening. We want to minimise that, both for the financial reasons and the waste minimisation reasons.
But if you've got the plant not working whilst you upgrade, would that not reduce the time frame needed to upgrade?
Yes, it would, yeah.
So, and what would be the estimated time? What's the estimated time in the report?
Well, again, it depends on the procurement process, but from construction, the estimate, and this is all based on a detailed scope of works, which is pending this decision. Yeah, but the estimate was you could probably do them in 2 stages over kind of 3 to 5 months, and you could probably do it all in 5 to 6 months, because you would just get more staff and more workers in to do that work. So there's not a great difference in the amount of actual construction time, but if you did them in a staged approach, it would potentially be over a 2-year period, because you would want to do it in that low season where there's less material coming in. So your autumn, winter.
So it wasn't, I guess it wasn't really considered to close the plant for a shorter period of time to get the upgrade done in one hit and then start it again.
Yes, yeah,
I
that
realise
was
the
one
cost,
of the options.
but there's a cost to the community as well.
So that is one of the options that we'd like to explore once we have a detailed scope of work and through the procurement process.
Yeah, thank you.
To close it while you do the work.
That is one of the options, but until we have that detail and have some response in terms of doing the works, we won't be able to sort of define what that timeline would be.
Right. Okay. Mike?
Thank you. It's roughly about 5% of the waste going into the plant is from commercial food waste. What would be the impact if that was removed as a waste stream?
And in what sense? The impact in terms of odour? Or?
Yeah, in terms of odour.
So there's no evidence to suggest that it has any impact on odour. Obviously, within the green bins, there is already food waste, and that's bulked up by the green waste as well. So in a composting process, you want to have the right ratios of different material. So essentially, you want to create a uniform material going into the process at the start. So any food waste coming in from private operators, which is predominantly food waste, then has to be mixed with your more grassy and woody materials anyway to then produce that right mix. So there's no evidence to suggest it would have any impact on odour at this stage.
Okay. And so I guess then if we looked at all food scraps, food waste go in there, removing that would obviously upset the balance of the compost itself, but would it actually improve the odour? Or
So if you went for a green waste only option, you would expect some improvement with odour, because that's essentially what was done prior to 2009 when there was no odour complaints at all. The implications of that are that it's about 15 to 25%, depending on the time of year, of the material coming in the green bins is food waste. So then that material then is no longer diverted and would have to go in the red bins, and then you'd have to address how you collect the red bins, because we'd be unlikely to do it on a 2-weekly cycle because of the producible nature of that material.
okay. And removing the food waste, though, would that affect the process cycle?
So green waste can be composted on its own. Food waste on its own can't be composted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just before we come to Mel, you've got a question. Aaron, your answer was in the presentation, which was if the expedited procurement model would be completed next summer, if it went well. Mel?
I was wondering why the final step about maturing outside, why does that happen? What's the point of it?
So the final maturation is a part of the composting process to ensure that it is ready for application to land. So essentially, if you have compost that has not had a time to mature and cure, if you put it on land, the nitrogen's not it's not linked into the compost properly, and it essentially isn't good for the plant. So you have to have a period where it matures to do that. With these upgrades, the predominant actual activity is happening in the tunnels, but you just need that time for it to rest and mature before it can be sold to customers.
So it's purely about it resting. So, and then you talked about the second step could potentially be, if we went with the recommendation today, would be about enclosing that. Why have you not just recommended enclosing it completely in this report today?
So we have confidence that that material outside will not have an odour that is considered offensive and objectionable, and essentially it's money that doesn't need to be spent at this stage. We've included that as a potential option, obviously for councillors to consider, because it is the lowest risk option, because everything would be treated through a biofilter which is controlled, but we have high confidence it won't be required.
Okay, and then lastly was just about the option about sending everything to landfill. Can that just be explained about the potential cost of that, including the levy and the effect on rates it could have if everything was just ending up in landfill?
Yep, so there's two parts of it. So if we send it to landfill, that's a significantly higher gate fee, so that's the fee we pay per tonne. There is a slight reduction in collection costs because we wouldn't be collecting a green bin. It would be a 2-bin system rather than a 3-bin system. But at the moment, you may have seen the central government are making moves to increase cost to dispose to landfill, and that's going up incrementally. So it's going up by, it was $10 a tonne, now it's 20, and it'll be up to 50. And there's the potential for that to increase further beyond that. Part of that is half of the money goes to projects through the Waste Minimisation Fund, and the other half comes back to councils. There is a risk if we move away from diversion, that we'll lose that income, which is at the moment minimal, but it will grow as the levy increases because it's going up by such a massive rate compared to where it was.
Thank you.
Okay, James?
Kia ora. The deputations were fairly consistent in calling on relocation. So can you just confirm, and that's been raised already, but can you confirm there are three issues, the consent, finding land and the dollars. Firstly, I know it's in the paper, but can you just confirm what the cost would be to relocate?
Yeah, I can do that. So a full relocation. So the capital expenditure is 70 million or just under, and then the operational expenditure is 1.8 million. That operational expenditure is primarily based on the increased transport costs, which has associated environmental impacts in terms of trucking. So there's because we would be looking at a site that has no immediate neighbouring residents, you would need to take it fairly far out of the city, which then when you're talking about the green trucks doing that, every time they need to dump a load, it adds significant cost onto council operationally.
So is that suggesting that you've got an idea of where it would go if it was to be relocated?
So it's based on the Becker report, which was from 2015. My recollection, that was they estimated just a area 50 kilometres away from the city would suffice. Yeah, I'd need to double check the report, but I'm pretty sure it's 50 kilometres.
Okay, then like Alan, let's imagine that there's no OPP plant, there's no organic processing plant in Bromley. Imagine that. In this day and age, would you cite such an operation in a residential area?
So at present there are a large number of such industries out in the Bromley area. I mean, for example, the waste...
Answer the
Question. Get off.
Answer the question.
For example, the
Not even qualified.
For example, the wastewater treatment plant is located out in Bromley, and that has been significantly upgraded over the years. I think there are two issues here. One is what you do with plants that have been there historically, and residents are affected by that over a number of years and have less tolerance of it. I think that's one of the issues you have to consider. If you're putting a new plant in, it would depend on the technology and what you can do in terms of the odour mitigation. So in terms of the anaerobic digestion, yes, we certainly would look at locating anaerobic digestion out in that area, perhaps not exactly on that site. It might make more sense to put it on the wastewater treatment plant site and put it adjacent to the digesters that we use out there for wastewater treatment. So there's not a problem in terms of residential neighbours, although it is ideal to have a buffer zone. So between any residential neighbours and any sort of heavy industry that produces noise, odour, dust.
Okay. Well, thank you. And then these are all questions, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you aware that I appreciate the work that staff have done on this matter, because it's very important and it needs to be respected by everybody that hard work has been put into it. And are you also aware that I recognise that Yanni has been at the forefront of this. However, the decision rests with the people sitting around this chamber. Are you aware of that?
Very good question, James. And I would like to endorse what James has said, and can we please continue a respectful manner in the chamber? We're working very hard to come to some sort of resolution about this problem for the people who are most directly affected and for the people of Christchurch. And I promise you that we are working hard, and I also appreciate the amount of work staff have put into this year. So questions continue. Anne.
Kia ora, and thank you.
No. Anne Galloway's got a question.
It affects 25% of the population of this city.
Anne, Well, I'm going to adjourn after questions for a cup of coffee, so Anne.
Thank you, kia ora, and thank you, Helen and Josh, for the clear way you've answered the questions and the clear way you've presented really technical information. We appreciate it. We heard from several submitters that it would be great to have a workshop, a technical workshop, to understand this information, to understand what is proposed, and also a site visit. How quickly could that be done? And if it could be done, you know, in the next 2 weeks or so, what impact would that have on what we're doing today in terms of a timeline? If we were to press pause to get that information to people before a decision is made?
Certainly we could hold a technical workshop within the next 2 weeks. A site visit, we would need to talk to Living Earth and negotiate when we could have access to the site. They have recently held an open day. I think
It was cancelled due to COVID.
Ah, okay. So they do run open days from time to time, as do the Eco Central facilities. But we could certainly look to arrange a site visit.
So it seems to me there would be benefit in being able to do that before we made a decision about this, to bring people along. As we've talked about, we want to be good neighbours, we want to collaborate, we want to build relationships. Is that going to be a problem if we decide to press pause today?
That's a question for councillors to answer.
I think what Anne's
in
asking,
terms
what's
of-
the impact on the timeline? If it was, it would be, the decision would be delayed till the 18th of December, which would be a month. What's the impact of that?
There would be very little impact on our timeline because we would continue to do the work that can be done in parallel.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Anne, that's a good question. Sarah?
Thank you. I'm interested in the anaerobic digestion as an option for the future. So if we went ahead with the current proposal on the site where we're upgrading and trying to do all we can to get rid of the odours, would the paper with the option of anaerobic digestion still be to us in not just ahead of the contract, because that could be 6 months ahead of the contract, but actually in time to do enough work to get it going so it would be in place for the end of the contract, if you like, so that we could just switch? So, I mean, there's a significant investment proposed for the upgrade of the plant now. I'm assuming there would be a significant investment for changing the whole process as well and the site. So what would the time frames around that one be? Because that seems like an option that would sort of eliminate odour.
So in terms of the anaerobic digestion, what's being looked at predominantly is not a complete change in the entire process. It's an additional process. So the type of anaerobic digestion you would likely use for a mixed system, which is green waste and food waste together, rather than just food waste like Auckland's just bringing in now, is dry anaerobic digestion. The material that's left over from that, the kind of solid material, would then usually go through an aerated composting process, such as what we've got now. So it would be an addition to that. So we could, I'm not sure in terms of timeframes. I think that would be something we'd have to look into exactly when we could bring that back to you. But it wouldn't completely change the whole process. It would be a pre-process to that.
Okay, but to get, if it was looking positive, actually having that information well ahead of the contract ending would make our job much easier when it came to new contracts, if you like.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Jimmy? And then Andrew, then Yanni.
Based on your PowerPoint presentation regarding to the anaerobic digestion, the last bullet point, you particularly emphasize the risk of declining landfill gas and more time required to investigate and evaluate options available. And also, I reviewed your meeting agenda page on 34. 3.16.4, you also emphasize some uncertainty, particularly the whether the turner of the Living Earth composting facility could be upgraded, the standard required, this and the aerobic direction. So I just want to know, because there's a technical the report and document, whether this mature or not mature, this report, because still have uncertainty and also is some of risk. This is my question.
Is this just on anaerobic digestion?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exactly why we want to do further feasibility studies into it. There are a lot of risks to it. It would be a dry AD plant would be the first of its kind in New Zealand.
Yes.
And we want to make sure we do our due diligence and investigate all the options.
Yes.
So that's why we want to do further investigation.
Okay.
The risk in terms of the tunnels, that's whether you could retrofit the current composting tunnels to be gas tight,
Yes.
and then make them anaerobic digesters,
Yeah.
or whether you'd have to build additional tunnels along with the existing tunnels. So that's more of a technical aspect which will have to be worked through in those feasibility studies.
Okay, so there's an ongoing assessment.
Absolutely.
Ongoing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. I just wanted to drill down into the potential for deferring the paper to give more time for engagement with the community. So if we were to defer the decision until what I understand from the previous question would be the 18th of December, just to confirm, that wouldn't cause any substantive delay in the work that would follow from a decision that we would make at that time?
For procuring the technical details.
Yep, do you want to?
Sorry, so just in terms of our procurement timeline, the next phase of works being proposed is to get a detailed scope of works for this project. The cut-off for procurement window is the 18th of December. So we really seek a decision today so that we can engage that next phase of works, so that we can get the technical design and come back to council in the new year with a plan to develop this plant. So by delaying it out to the 18th of December, we miss that window and we push the timeline back into the new year.
Okay, so follow-on question from that. If we were to do that, and I'm mindful of the comments that we've heard from people making deputations today, from the community today, about the lack of time to engage and fully understand the options in the report, do we have capacity and capability to support community meetings or other meaningful engagement with the community, particularly given that we've heard there's a community group to be formed, which I'm hopeful might mean that there is an opportunity for better engagement with and better engagement from the community? Have we got capacity to engage meaningfully in a way that might improve community understanding and support of the options?
That was the question Anne just asked.
I'm looking across at my friends from Communications and
I
Engagement.
mean, I guess where I'm coming from, if we were going to defer, we need to understand we're doing that for a good reason.
Yes, so in terms of the technical team here, yes, we could do that work. There'd be a question in my mind as to whether or not we develop the technical scope of works in parallel as well, pending the council decision. That may mean some rework if the council makes a different decision, but it would also enable us to be out on the front foot in time. So, I mean, there are a number of questions to hold in your mind there. But yes, we could do some technical workshops with the community, and indeed we could do technical workshops with the community whether you make a decision or defer a decision.
Yes, yes.
So we could still do technical workshops with the community in terms of improving the understanding of what the technology is there today and what is proposed in terms of the odour mitigation.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
And we will have continued relationships and engagement with the community as time goes on anyway. But I'm a little bit confused now because, Helen, your response to Anne's question was it will make very little difference to the time frame. And Rowan's come and said it will make a difference if we defer.
Yes,
till the
but
18th.
in responding to Anne's question, I would have continued the preparation work that we're doing now, pending the council decision.
But
so we would develop the scope of works, but we would need to wait for the council decision before we put it out.
Before you go embark on procurement. And the 18th is too late, did you say?
Is that
Rowan?
the last day we can put them out? That's the cut-off date.
So an option might be to try and squeeze it into another meeting before that, but... Pardon? Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll keep going with the questions. Yanni, and then...
Thank you. I just wanted to check on the, as part of the adaptive management plan, we had 3 months to significantly reduce the odours, and that didn't happen. we were told that the recipe was going to be a solution. Can you just tell me why the recipe has failed? And how many odour complaints we've had in November, and how many non-compliances to date?
So on the second part of the question, I don't know the exact number of odour complaints. The last reporting period was at the CLG, where we got some of those details, but that didn't include November. That information is held by Environment Canterbury. In terms of the recipe, I think the key thing is the recipe and the operational changes were really designed to fix the problem as quickly as possible, and there were a number of trials tested and then selected based on how successful they were. The recipe has shown a significant improvement in the stability of the compost. That's using a standard called the Solvita test, which measures the stability. Now, there's a couple of issues. Obviously, that doesn't completely mean there's no odour, and what we're proposing with this upgrade is to increase that even further. So when it goes outside, the Solvita test will be essentially at a practical maturity state, where it's ready for sale. It just needs that settling.
But I think what people are struggling to understand is all this 3-month focus on improvement, the problem seems to be getting worse. The complaints last week were...
Okay, Yanni, we've appreciated that.
High.
We're moving forward today.
Well, how can people have confidence in what you're proposing, given what was proposed in part of the 3 months?
All right, the question is,
failed?
can people have confidence that what your proposal is today is going to make a big difference?
So we are not proposing to continue with the improving the operational recipe changes,
Yep.
although we will continue to do that while the plant is operating as it is. What we're proposing today is a step change in the technology.
Okay.
So there will be, I think the biggest change is that there will be only 10% of the material maturing outside that is there today. So that is a significant change in terms of the potential to produce either odour or dust from having a 90% reduction in the material stored outside on site.
Right, but
that is the biggest change.
What I was trying to understand...
That material will also be more mature, so that that is clearly reducing the potential for odour.
But what I was trying to understand, has the recipe actually made the situation worse, the change to the recipe? Because why are we getting so many complaints now compared to 3 months ago?
So we haven't got the latest information from Environment Canterbury on that, so I'm not able to answer that. But you're right, there hasn't been a significant improvement from the changes made through the adaptive management plan with respect to the organics processing plant. That's why we're here today,
Yes.
proposing a significant investment to make those improvements.
Thank you,
So
Helen.
for the Eco Central Eco Drop site, we have seen significant improvements, and we're very pleased, and Environment Canterbury are satisfied that that has made a difference to the odours from that site.
That's now compliant.
So that site, well, yes, it's not only is it compliant, but it's not producing offensive and objectionable odours. That is the really important part
So
of it.
I was really interested to understand in terms of why the current design build operate, why that hasn't worked and where the accountability is. And
No, Yanni, we are moving forward today.
Okay,
Joshua's
well,
already
one of the
touched
questions,
on
one of the
why
deputations.
the plant is in the condition that it is today, and we're choosing options that are going to upgrade the facility. We're not going to get into the contract discussion today, I'm sorry.
Well, can I just ask then, because one of the deputations made reference to the fact that when it was built, that the it should be basically under odour generating parts of the treatment process shall be maintained under negative air pressure to prevent odour release. Extracted air shall be treated before release. All treatment plant processes which produce or have potential to produce significant odour shall be enclosed. We just heard from staff in answer to one of the other questions that the outdoor windrows have an odour to it which is causing the problem.
So
Can I
we'll-
ask
Come on,
why
we'll let
it isn't
Joshua
fully
answer
enclosed
that.
now when that was what was supposed to be done at the time it was built?
So in the documents when it was first built, all odour producing areas of the plant were supposed to be under negative pressure. It was also allowed in the consent, and there's a specific consent condition for this, that managed windrows are allowed outside. We find ourselves in a position now where those windrows are the source of an odour, and this upgrade is to remedy that.
Thank you. Phil, you have a question?
What odour modelling was done at the time that the plant was built, and what odour modelling has been done on the new options that you're putting forward, so that we can have confidence?
Can we just move forward and say what monitoring will be done when you've implemented the change?
Modelling. It's modelling in terms of the design.
Modelling.
So there would have been odour modelling done, I hope, as part of the design to build it. What I'm trying to understand is what does that modelling look like then, and what does it look like now with what you're proposing, and what's actually happened?
I don't have the detail on when the plant was built. In terms of moving forward, we would look to put in a performance guarantee in any design we do, which would involve odour. So normally how they work is you do a detailed odour assessment of the area prior to the rebuild, and then you do one after, and then they're compared to confirm that it's had the impact it would have. A lot of that work, when we look overseas to examples, we're very confident that the tests that in terms of the maturity and that sort of thing is sufficient, but we would look to put that into any contract to build the upgrades.
Thank you, that's a good answer.
I did circulate these questions on Friday, and I still haven't had an answer to them. So I'll just leave that with the chair, but just to let councillors know that a number of 7 questions were put in, and I still had no answer to that on Friday. So I just wanted to record that, which, you know, is a bit disappointing. And just the, really, I guess the question I was really keen to understand from 2 final questions. One is, do we have the number of complaints that have been made since the plant was set up in its current form? How many were investigated and how many have been non-complying?
We don't have that level of detail today. We can go back and try and find it. It'll be a big piece of work, and a lot of it was held by Environment Canterbury, and they'll be able to charge us to do the administration of that work, but we could definitely ask.
But in terms of understanding the community impact, I thought that should be recorded on an annual basis. It should be pretty easy to get.
So we can definitely do the number of complaints and the number of non-compliances. Okay. This year is slightly different because of the Smelter app, where they're not recorded against an individual site. It's just a type of odour and then investigated.
And the final question from me was in regards to the Local Government Act and the council policy on significance and engagement, where my understanding is that council has a duty to ensure that communities will be engaged and that we will seek community views on matters of high significance, which this has been seen to be. And that's supposed to be done in a timely fashion, which gives the community an opportunity to understand the options. Can you just, I mean, I did put this in, but I would just like someone to give us advice on the assessment around our significance and engagement policy as to seeking community views on the actual options.
We'll get Ian Thompson down here for when we come back from morning tea.
Thank you.
Phil, one last question, and then we'll break.
Hi, thank you. Could you please go back two slides, if possible, to where it says reduction of compost odour, outdoor, sorry.
That's the one.
Now, if we build the at the moment, it's all maturing in the large area, is that right? So when it all matures in the small area, as soon as it's out of there, it'll be gone off site. So it won't be lying around outside.
That's
as it sells.
So at the moment, that's how it works, and we've made no decision on how that would work in the future.
What I'm getting at, all the stuff in the large blue area is sitting there maturing because it's not mature enough to get rid of.
Yeah.
Is it right? So if it's all maturing in the wee shed, as soon as it comes out of the wee shed, it should be able to leave site.
No, so those aren't sheds, they're just areas of maturation. Area. So at the moment, the area above the large area in the left-hand photo is compost that's being screened, so it's ready for sale and it's just curing and waiting to be sold.
What I'm getting at is, because it's not covered, you're still going to get dust. Whether it's...
we just asked that question, and Josh, you want to answer that one again? So you're going down from 30,000 square metres to 2,000, And your reply to the dust issue, can you repeat that?
Well, before we go there, and I don't think we need to repeat that. I think yes, you're correct. There is still the potential for both odour and dust from the smaller area, albeit significantly reduced. However, that's why we've said, as stage 2, we'll monitor the odour and the dust production from there, and further enclose if necessary. So that's part of what you're considering today.
Yeah, what I'm sort of trying to get to, you do stockpile stuff there that's ready to sell, but it's not sold. It's not as if it's as soon as it's finished out of any maturing area. Yeah, it's gone instantly, or are you stockpiling it there, waiting for it to go?
It's there ready to sell. Yeah.
Okay, so there is a stockpile of it which can have dust coming off it when it's blowing like crazy. That's what
Yes, it could, but there's controls in place to stop that.
So you haven't achieved anything?
So that is an option, that stage 2 be brought forward and completed at the same time. So are there any more questions?
Just a question for you, Madam Chair. Just wondering over the break if there's an opportunity to talk with staff a little bit more about the implications of moving this decision. I'd appreciate it.
Well, we'll do that in a public meeting when we get back, if that's what you want to.
Just
we can have more questions when we get back if we want.
Good. Thank you.
So we'll adjourn for 15 minutes. What's the time?
10:02.
I'm just concerned about time. We've got the agenda to get through, so if we can be back by 11:45, it's 10 minutes. All right, so we now have welcome Ian Thompson, our legal advisor, at the table, and Yanni has one final question to put to you about level of significance and consultation. So fire away, Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just mindful of what happened with the city housing rent increase case when it went before the High Court, the judicial review. And my understanding in terms of our obligations under the Local Government Act are that when we have a significance and engagement policy and we do an assessment of something of being of high significance, that there are obligations under us to seek community views in a manner that enables the community to understand in a timely way the options and issues being put forward to council before a decision. Now, in the High Court case with the city housing, one of the criticisms was that the option to get government funding wasn't fully canvassed and the views of tenants weren't sought. So with that in mind, I'm really interested to understand why we're not having a process to seek community views on the options being put forward in this report, and how we can rely on the fact that people have said there's an odour as being sufficient. Thank you.
A couple of points in response to that. Yes, the report acknowledges that this is a matter of high significance, and that is reflected in the extent and the detail of the material that you've got in front of you. There are options identified and assessed. There have been independent reports and a peer review, which reflects the fact that this is a significant matter. When it comes to engaging with the community, it's fair to say that you've got a pretty good idea of what the community views are in connection with this matter, and that is that they want the odour removed if possible. You're also aware that there are a group of people in the community who want the facility removed from its current site. And you've got that option in the material in front of you for you to consider. So my take on it is that, yes, it's significant. The community is aware of the issues, is aware of the fact that the council is working towards reducing the odour, and frankly wants the council to get on with it. The other aspect is that if the council doesn't act quickly, it's likely that ECAN may take the decision out of your hands and require you to take steps. So it's not too dissimilar from the issue we had with Coronation back in 2018, where if the council didn't take steps, the medical officer of health was going to. So I'm relatively comfortable with the position that we're in. I'm aware that there has been community engagement, and I understand that staff have committed to you that they will continue with that engagement and ensure that the community is alongside the council in terms of the work that's going to be done to, if you make that decision, if you proceed with the work that's recommended.
Sorry, just check. So the local community board hasn't had their view sought, and the questions that people have raised this morning and the questions that have been raised in the letters in regards for requests for more time, with what we've heard and what's been said in terms of the community board, our policy that says we'll work to ensure community is sufficiently informed to understand the issue or proposal, options, impacts, and has time to respond so that they're able to participate in an engagement process with confidence. Are you saying that, based on what we've heard this morning, that we can have confidence that that's the case?
I think so, but it's also open for the council to require further engagement if that's what you wish to do. if you think there hasn't been sufficient engagement so far.
I guess what concerns me most is the fact that we've got a series of options, not about the odour in terms of the wider issue, but specific options to deal with the odour that we have not specifically sought the community view on. And that's what I'm having problems understanding, how we can have confidence in what our significance and engagement policy says.
What you have got is a very detailed assessment of what would be required to address the odour problem. And you would have to perhaps question whether consultation on those options would achieve any further, get you any further towards solving the problem. It's a very detailed report. It has identified the options and assessed them.
Just, you gave an example of the coronation issue, but another regulatory issue is the Akaroa wastewater treatment plant. Given how much extensive community engagement has been done in that in terms of a community working party and several rounds of consultation on the options, can you just explain why that is different to this?
I think that that is a far wider issue and had a lot of complexities, intricacies in it that I don't quite see the same with this particular issue. There is a problem to be addressed. The council has received advice on how it can be addressed. And I don't think really the two situations are quite the same.
Okay, I agree with that answer too. Thank you, Ian. Look, in the light of the public participation today and the interest in this and the desire for the community to actually be more informed about the technicalities of the options, I'm just going to lay this item on the table for now, deal with the rest of the agenda items, with a view of at the end of this meeting I'm going to propose an adjournment to give time for the staff to give a technical presentation or information dissemination session to the members of the public. It'll be a public meeting, which will include the options, the advantages and disadvantages, and the proposed outcomes from that. And also it'll give time for a site visit for the community to go and make a visit to the plant. And we have a date to come back to the meeting to recommence, which will be 4 p.m. on the 9th of December. But I'll deal with that at the end of the meeting. So I'm going to lay this on the table for now and continue with the rest of the meeting agenda. So that takes us now to item...
Do we need to vote on that?
10. Do we have Diane here